Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and let's talk about Grand Cathay again today with the not too distant future but also the very far future. You see, if we look at Grand Cathay's roster, it's not too bad. Yes, I know some people are going to be kind of annoyed when I say that, but as a base game faction, it's actually fairly decent. There's a lot of variety, there's a lot of different types of units. The only reason why they're suffering right now, same as quite a few other races, is because Champions of Chaos DLC was absolutely massive, and it really fleshed out the mono-god faction so much that, yeah, Cathay feels pale in comparison. However, since many characters have been hinted for the future for Grand Cathay, it's very likely that we're going to see, well, quite a lot. We already have two legendary lords for Grand Cathay, which is the most common situation when a faction and a new race is first released. This is what brought in the roster that we already know of. And fairly recently we've seen the announcement of Yuan Bo with a fair amount of units hinted. Hopefully the units that we'll be seeing in the DLC. Keep in mind that whilst they're mentioned in the ebook, it doesn't really mean that we might see them in Shadows of Change. Although it's kind of likely. I'm just saying that here because, well, don't get your hopes up, right? There's certain things that have been mentioned throughout the lifespan of Game 1 and Game 2, which, funny enough, aren't even in game yet. So yeah, we've seen the mention and artwork of the Onyx Crowman, so I'm imagining that these guys are pretty much confirmed. There's also the Shangju Wardrom, something which I guess is going to work very similar to the Wardroms in Three Kingdoms, but as a single entity rather than, you know, a group of, I believe, 8 it was? Wuxing monks have been named also, which is pretty interesting because, well, monk units are kind of cool, so yeah, hopefully it's something like that. But there's also been mention of Gate Wardens, Celestial Dragon Guard officers, Gate Masters, Shugengen Lord Generals. That's a lot of characters, which, yeah, let's be honest, DLCs generally, at least Lord Packs, don't introduce that many different types of lords and heroes, especially since we're going to be seeing 3 different races get attention this DLC. So they're not going to just go full ham on Cathay and leave Tzeentch and Kislev out to rot. Well, at least they hope they don't. I also imagine that not every single unit has been revealed for this DLC, as on average we normally have, what, 4 to 6 units? This would be units themselves and not stuff like lords and hero options, so hopefully this remains the same. Again, stuff can change. This is the first time that we're seeing a 3-way lord pack. Now, I don't want to talk too much about Shadows of Change. The fact is that they've already started doing a little bit of promotion, so hopefully it's not long until they do the proper reveal. As much as I am interested in Pharaoh, and I'll be honest with you, I am, it's kind of burning me out a little bit, mostly because, well, they're not really showing anything. They're doing campaign showcases, but it's so fast-cutting that it's not really a campaign showcase. But what we can do is turn our attention towards 3 missing characters that we kinda expect are gonna be DLC characters in the future. This would be Yin-yin the Sea Dragon, Li Dao the Fire Dragon, and we don't really know his name just yet because I don't really think he's gonna be called Sun Wukong anymore, but the Monkey King. That's a lot of characters, which if we get them alongside DLC, something like that we can expect considering that right now FLC Legendary Lords aren't a thing, would mean that Cathay at minimum would get 4 DLCs throughout the lifespan of Total War Warhammer 3, meaning that they should be getting about as much attention as the Skaven did in Warhammer 2, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We do know from previous sources and interviews that Grand Cathay is one of those factions that is extremely multicultural, has loads of different humans and other beasts that live among the populace, so it's a fair assumption that we could see a lot of content. Again, I'm kind of imagining, this is more old world related, but it kind of fits with Total War Warhammer, that the Cathay Army book is basically going to be like the Space Marine Army book. We're already seeing the parallels with the characters being kind of like the Primarchs. So yeah, expect a very, very big book. Great thing about that is a big book also means a lot of units. So yeah, this should be kind of interesting. I mean, if we separate the lords, we can even start thinking about what type of units could actually fit with them. Li Dao the Fire Dragon is, well, a fire dragon, so you can kind of expect fire type units. We already know of the Vermilion Bird, which is something akin to a phoenix. Fun fact, it's technically in-game already, as the Vermilion Birds are what keeps the Cathayan balloons up and running, but a single entity flying monster going at quick speed, being able to take out other targets, character hunting, so on. Yeah, would be kind of cool. Add that with a generic spellcaster, so the Cathayans have access to the Law of Fire, either as a lord or a hero, or both, could work very well as both. And since the Fire Dragon is in the same geographic location, more or less, where the Nanman would be in real-life China, take some inspiration from the Nanman. And while some of you might say, well, they did that with Three Kingdoms, Games Workshop wouldn't allow it, it's very likely that Games Workshop have done this for whatever this Cathayan book ends up being. Hopefully one day we'll see it. It's annoying because we know it's there. We've seen people hold it. So yeah, Flame Cannon unit, which would be another artillery piece. Again, something that we've already seen in game, as the dwarves have their own, but a fire-based faction for the Cathayans would kind of have their own too, wouldn't they? Get some flame dancers, you know, a skirmishing troop which can debuff the enemy as they get into combat using fire as their main weapon. You know what would be really, really cool? Add in a tiger unit that would act as a single entity, very similar to the snow leopard, so it would use the same rig, probably the same animations too, but there you go. You've got a decent amount of troops that would add into the culture of Grand Cathay, and yeah, you know, a little bit of difference, which is always kind of important. So next we're going to move on to Yin-yin the Sea Dragon. This is a character that we're expecting also, as she has been mentioned a few times. Plus, it's one of the only characters that we can really expect alongside a Lizardman DLC as a possible adversary. So Yin-yin herself would have access to possibly the Law of the Deep. It would be kind of cool. She should be a pseudo-horde. I know that I say this a lot, but it's a mechanic which is frankly very good and does not get used enough in the Total War setting, and it's really sad about that. But we have to look towards what a character such as Yin-yin should have in terms of units. And really all I could think about is pirate stuff. Get something like the Free Company, but a Cathayan version. A unit akin to the Lothan Sea Guard too, because you're going to need hybrid units, you're going to need skirmishing units too. Mostly because if you're going to be going into Lustria, this is just something that I think is going to happen. Well, simply put, if you're going to be going to basically Warhammer Jurassic Park, you're going to want some hybrid units for mobility to be able to do some damage. Add in a special type of hunter troop, kind of similar to maybe how the Elven Shadow Warriors kind of work. Then a fast-moving skirmish cavalry unit, again similar to the Elven Alarian Reavers, so you've got something that can fire but also have spears to be fairly decent in the charge. And then finally round that off with a Cathayan Admiral Lord, right? So you get access to a Lord which is also a pseudo-horde, possibly recruited via restrictions, but that means that you'll be able to get some as soon as you do a certain campaign mechanic, and there you go. Already something kind of interesting. Obviously all these units would then go into the main Cathayan factions, and you'd have a little bit to have fun with overall. And then we look towards the Monkey King. So the Monkey King is a rather interesting character because we know that he has monkey warriors. So with that, we could expect him to have a completely different roster to most of the other Cathayans, but possibly also controlling Cathayans too, mostly because we know that he has taken over Grand Cathay at least once before, even if that was for a short-lived rebellion. So I've got an idea. What if the Monkey King had his own unique roster, which would be available to both the Monkey King and Grand Cathay, but it would depend on certain situations. So when it comes to the Monkey King, you would have a new Lord choice, new hero choices, completely new units, all based around monkeys. So, you know, chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, every possible monkey that you can imagine. There's been a few that have actually been mentioned within the game itself, mostly when it was the changeling trying to discredit the Monkey King, so a baboon and stuff like that. Now give them all the equipment that you need, give them bows, give them hand weapons, let them attack with their fists. They could be skirmish troops, but they could also have versions which would be more regimental depending on the actual monkey themselves. As a range unit, you know, bows, and this was a little bit of a meme, but it could kind of work as a short range thing. Shit throwers, right? Have a giant gorilla as a great ape, you know, a fast moving, quite large single entity that can do quite a lot of damage, and there you go. It would be a massive roster, maybe even about as much as a normal base game roster, but there could be a lot of fun here. Now, when it comes to the Monkey King, you'd start off in the Mountains of Heaven, you'd be able to expand from there, but whilst you're in the Mountains of Heaven, you can only recruit monkey warriors. When you go into the cities of Grand Cathay, then you'll be able to actually take over, and you'll be able to start building Cathayan warriors. We know stuff like this is possible because we've seen it with, say, for example, a Total War Saga Troy, where certain buildings can pop up as you take it over. Make it that the provincial capitals will be the ones that you'll be able to recruit your Cathayan warriors from, And the minor settlements, these are all the ones within Grand Cathay and not in the Mountains of Heaven, those will be purely turned into economy-based camps, or even just the camps that you'll recruit your regular monkey warriors from. Now, when it comes to the Cathayans, make it a quest. How about this? You need to go to the Mountains of Heaven, you need to beat the Monkey King, you can confederate him, and then bring in your monkey warriors into the fold. That means that you will then have new buildings pop up as your options, which you'll be able to build up monkey warriors from. And before someone says that that's not possible, that's actually very much possible if you remember Total War Saga Troy, where if you decided to do a quest for one of the specific legendary creatures, and you unlocked their special units alongside it, that building would pop up and then you could just build it in your normal camps. I think both ways kind of works quite well, because the first one for the Monkey King himself acts like he's trying to take over Cathay, and when it comes to the Cathayans getting some monkey warriors, that would be the Cathayans just bringing him to heel, you know? Maybe finally telling him, listen, stop being an idiot, we need help, so you force him into submission and there you go. I think that would actually work out quite well. Now, before we end this video, we do have to talk about the Jade Blooded vampires. This is a faction that many people are expecting, and yeah, I don't know if it could work as a Cathayan faction, or it could work as a vampire count faction, or hell, I've seen some theories floating about as a vampire coast faction. As one of the vampire factions, well, you know, it kind of makes sense. Vampire Coast will probably be the best one, considering that we're expecting a rather large DLC for the vampire counts, and Coast could kind of do with a little bit of content, let's be very, very honest there. However, we do know that Cathay is a quite spiritual place, and it could be possible we could see a vampire faction within Grand Cathay, and just work as a pseudo sub-race, something like that, or a bunch of undead versions of the units, kind of like how I always envision Muslon and the Red Duke, you know, half Bretonnian, half vampire count, where it would be kind of the same for this. I don't know, this is just something that I'm putting out there because I know if I don't mention the Jade Blooded, people are going to get angry and people are going to start mentioning it. It happens a lot more often than you think. Don't get me wrong, I think they'll eventually come. They wouldn't be mentioned if not, because it's kind of one of those factions that everyone is going to be very interested in. But obviously time will tell, and yeah, it's all a waiting game. It's been kind of slow lately, but it's understandable. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I wonder what you guys think regarding each of the missing characters, what units they would have, what they wouldn't have. It's more of the case of, I imagine them to have stuff to make them a little bit unique, but also fill out the faction a little bit more. Time will tell once again, but yeah, I'm keeping to that Space Marine Cafe theory where the book is just going to be stupidly large. Anyways, have a good day guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.